All right, so we're now in the second part of this lecture on survey methods, where we had just gotten finished talking about reliability and validity in theory. And so in this section, we're going to spend some time on more practical considerations with respect to actually, carrying out survey research. Okay, and so first, in the way of additional considerations, I'm not going to go through each of these, but let me just highlight a few. One of the things you want to make sure you do in your study is, if you are using survey methods, you want to make sure that the survey or the instrument that you're using matches the variables that you've selected for your study. Okay, so for example, if your study is about self-esteem, then your instrument obviously should match that concept, right? If your study is about health, then your survey should those question items should match that concept. Okay, so this is also to say that there's no wasted motion, and so there's no need to put all sorts of other question items on your survey that aren't related to your key variables, which should be two for most of you, right? So no need to add other question items aside from basic demographics. Okay, I say here also be willing to borrow. That is, there's no need to develop your own survey from scratch. Okay. This is an important point. The preference is to go out and find a survey that already exists with respect to your topic. Okay, there's tons of self-esteem surveys. There's tons of depression surveys. You name it. There's tons of socio-emotional development, related surveys. They're all out there. They're mostly out there, and most likely they've been tested for reliability and validity already. Okay, so we're not going to have an opportunity to test that instrument for reliability and validity, and so you want to use an instrument that's already been tested for psychometric properties, is what we call it. Okay. I also note make sure you have the unit of analysis in mind, right? Is your study about students? Is it about clients? Is it about agencies? That's a completely different level of analysis, right? Is it about agencies? Is it about state laws and public health in each state? That's a completely different unit of analysis, and so the survey should be directed to that unit of analysis that pertains to your study. Okay. All right. You can see here that this is a sample survey, a sample instrument that I just included here, just to give you guys a feel for what a survey is. So check out these items here. There's 10 items on the survey, or scale, for that matter. The first item says, I never hesitate to go out of my way to help someone in trouble. And so someone who's filling out that survey has to choose either T or F, which is true or false. Okay. And so what's in parentheses there is a scoring system. So if there's a match, right? If I answer true, I never hesitate to go out of my way to help someone in trouble, right? That's true for me. Okay, and so that's a match. So I get 1 point. Okay, let's look at number 2. I have never intensely disliked anyone. That's probably false for me. Okay, that's clearly false for most of us. Although I try my best, but it doesn't happen. But so that's a false. So that's not a match. Okay, that's not a match, and so my score is still a 1. Number 3. There have been times when I was quite jealous of the good fortune of others. Most likely false. Fortunately, jealousy is not one of my things, and so I'm going to say false to that one. That's another match. So I have, items 1 and 3 are matching. I would never think of letting someone else be punished for my wrongdoings. I'll say true to that one. That's another match. That's 3. Let me just one more here, just to get the feel here. So I sometimes feel resentful when I don't get my way. I got to say true. I've got to say true to that one. That's not a match. Okay, that's not a match. So my score is a 3 so far, and so you just go through in the same manner, and you'd have to score that for each participant that fills out this survey. And so my question here, of course, is what is the scale measuring? What is the scale measuring? Just to pause to let you guys think about it for a second. This is a social desirability scale. Okay, a social desirability scale. If someone scores really high on this measure, on this scale, it indicates that they're likely to give you responses that you want to hear. Okay. Anyway, so here's a sample survey that I just shared with you all. Okay. There are different types of measures, of course. There are open-ended questions, closed-ended questions. These should be familiar to you from your more clinically oriented classes, right? There are advantages, disadvantages to asking open-ended and closed-ended questions that you can think through. Open-ended questions, just a few points here, are typically associated with qualitative research. Qualitative, you guys by now should know the distinction between qualitative and quantitative. Qualitative having to do with analyzing, collecting data in the form of words, as opposed to quantitative research collecting data in the form of numbers, right? Analyzing in the form of numbers. You've got to think about what you're wanting to accomplish with your study. Do you want deeper idiographic responses, right? Do you want your participants to elaborate on their responses? Then open-ended questions are probably for you. On the other hand, there's closed-ended questions, of course. These are predetermined response sets that I note here, right? Typically associated with quantitative research. The response choices can range anywhere from dichotomous response ranges to checking all that apply, fill in the blank, all sorts of different ways to use closed-ended questioning. Okay, I'll touch on it in a little more detail in a second here. Okay. So here, I'm just making the point that whether you realize it or not, you've probably, at your agencies even, you've probably used surveys in some form. Okay, so if you've administered an intake form, many students of ours, they conduct intakes at their agencies. That's a survey. Okay, your client history forms, right? That maybe your supervisors filled out, or maybe you even fill out, right? Those are sample survey or actually surveys, right? And so you may not realize it, but surveys are used. They're quite prevalent in the work that we do. Okay. If at this point you're thinking, okay, I know I'm going to use a survey. I just want some basic guidance, some general guidance on what to think about in choosing my instrument and administering my instrument. One of the first things you want to look at with respect to your survey are the question items themselves, right? You want to look through your question items and think about relevancy. Okay, think about relevancy of each question item. If there's a question on your survey, okay, that doesn't seem to fit with your study, right? By all means, toss it out. Okay, so this is the basic principle of parsimony, or being stingy with your questions, because we're all busy, and so you don't want to take people's time if you don't have to. And so, making sure that each question has a very specific purpose. That is, it should capture one of your two key variables of interest. Now, one caveat is if your survey has already been tested for reliability and validity, taking out items here and there randomly is going to affect that reliability score. Okay, there's a reliability score attached to your existing surveys that are out there, and so this is talking about when you're constructing surveys. You want to be parsimonious in the way that you develop your questions. Okay, so existing surveys, you want to leave them intact for the most part. If you want to take out questions from existing surveys, what you need to figure out is are there certain factors, or are there sort of clusters of items within that survey? In which case you can take out those clusters, but you can't take out individual items because that's going to affect, like I said, the reliability and validity of that survey. Another major consideration in both selecting and developing surveys, that is, think about the response format, right? Do you want a survey that's mostly open-ended or closed-ended? If it's an open-ended survey, are the questions structured? Is that interview structure, is that going to be highly structured or completely unstructured or somewhere in between? If you're deciding on a closed-ended format, right? You have a whole range of possibilities. You can use dichotomous response sets, right? Yes, no, just like a note here, yes, no, male, female, and such. Do you use multiple choice response sets? The most popular being the Likert type scaling. So strongly agree to strongly disagree. Are you going to use that type of scale? Or one thing that I would try to avoid, though, if possible, is this notion here of, or this choice here of checking all that apply, right? That option I would recommend against because that's going to get really messy when you're trying to analyze the data. And so if you're planning on using closed-ended items, in other words, I would go with either dichotomous response sets or multiple choice response sets. Fill in the blank can be okay for things like income, but you do want to use them sparingly, okay? Because that can be open-ended in a sense, and so that can also get pretty messy when you're trying to analyze your data, okay? A third major consideration when you're either constructing or selecting a survey, an existing survey to use for your study, is the ordering of the items, right? The basic consideration here being, well, do you put the more difficult questions first, or do you put the more difficult questions last? And there are different schools of thought on it, right? The idea being that if you put the difficult questions first, you might turn off your participants, right? You might turn them off from even getting through your survey. Yeah, I think most students would tend towards starting with easy questions first. You want to ease your participants in, and then get your more difficult questions or your more sensitive questions at the end. Sometimes researchers do choose to use their more difficult to answer questions first, and that's in the case of surveys that are a little bit longer usually, right? So if you have a survey that's not just 1 or 2 pages, but quite lengthy, and you're trying to capture that important information, you basically put it first, and the person's concentration can wander off here and there, and so it's important to get those items first, right? But generally speaking, I think for the most part, if you have a shorter survey, for our purposes, I think it's preferable to have easy to answer questions first, and then difficult questions last. Also note some pitfalls to avoid in the actual question items themselves. So we want to avoid jargon, certainly. Okay, so avoiding fancy language. You want to put yourself in the shoes of the participants who are answering the questions. Make the questions items easy. Double-barreled items here, right? Leading questions. So you want to make sure that each question item is asking one question, right? Look at the example here. So does NEIU offer life insurance and health benefits to faculty? It looks like one question, but it's actually 2. Okay. You want to split that up into 2 separate lines. Those are actually 2 questions. Okay. So don't combine 2 questions. Try to avoid using leading questions. So wouldn't you agree that Senator Biden should be elected for president? Right. You don't want to force an answer that you want to hear. Right. Those responses are going to be biased. Okay. Just a quick note here: hard to recall items and futuristic questions. Hard to recall items. For me, the basic rule of thumb: I don't like to go farther than maybe 2 years back. Right? It's hard enough to remember things from yesterday or even 1 or 2 weeks ago, let alone a year ago or 2 years ago. I certainly wouldn't ask questions going back further than 2 years. On the other side, if you're actually asking futuristic questions. That's the same principle kind of applies. Like, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? Who knows what's going to happen 5 years from now? And so, I would try to avoid futuristic questions if possible. Be careful with overlapping response sets, right? Look at this sample question here. How old are you? 15 to 20, 20 to 25. You can see that if someone's 20, then they're stuck between A and B, right? So that's not mutually exclusive, and so be careful with that in designing your questions. Okay. Other considerations, writing principles, right? Good writing applies here, being concise, being specific, avoiding redundancy. Instructions. A quick note on instructions. Okay. It's not redundant though to repeat your instructions at the beginning of either each page. If you have a 2-page survey, okay, I would put the instructions on the top of each of those 2 pages. Or if you have more than 2 constructs, let's say your study is about self-determination and self-esteem and anxiety, right? If you have a 3-part research question, I would put instructions before all the questions that relate to each of those 3 variables. Okay, and so this is just to say that repeating instructions is not being redundant. Final touches, pilot testing, and such. Let me get to the final point here before my time runs out. Okay. Response rates. The typical industry standard is 70%. Okay. So when I asked you guys to come up with 30 surveys, It's not okay to hand out 100 hoping you get 30, because that's a 30% response rate. You want to be very careful in the way that you select your participants. Okay.